Debate on vote number 10, Public Enterprises Appropriation Bill.
Thank you. May I now recognize the Honorable, the Minister of Public Enterprises to the podium. Thank you. Order, honorable members, order.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members, and ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor to present the budget vote for the Department of Public Enterprises for the year 2023-2024. Around this time next year, South Africans will once again show the world our intent as a nation to unite and to choose a path that will set this country on yet another course to realize its true potential. Next year's general elections mark a critical milestone in our ongoing quest to create a just and equitable society where no one is left behind. As government, our fundamental responsibility is to create an enabling environment where the dreams of our people are not held hostage by selfish interests driven by greed, cynicism, and saboteurs involving treasonous acts on our infrastructure and pillaging state resources. Our socioeconomic transformation agenda is predicated on the urgent need to deliver on our commitment to social justice and affirm the deals enshrined in our Constitution. State-owned enterprises, we believe, play a vital role in creating and enhancing the economic and social well-being of all South Africans. This reality underpins our work to revitalize our SOEs and reclaim them from criminals and the beneficiaries of state capture, whose treasonable acts meant that Eskom cannot deliver safe and reliable electricity. The network industries, including energy and the logistics sector, are key to South Africa's ability to faster and more inclusively generate economic growth. Our people need a reliable supply of electricity, as we have all learned, to run their small businesses, light up their streets, and for their children to learn. Our people need reliable trains to work. Our miners and farmers need efficient ports that enable them to export their produce and remain competitive. There's an urgent need to overhaul our rail, ports, and logistics infrastructure in order to cut the cost of doing business, create more jobs, and boost business confidence. This is a national imperative. This task should unify all of us to work together as South Africans to shoulder the responsibility of creating a bright future for our country. The solutions of yesterday, regrettably, will not take us much further. Our world faces serious tectonic shifts that require decisive leadership, visionary execution, and a capable state to tackle our daunting triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The war in Europe has underlined the fragility of our world, not only in economic terms, but also in the way that global governance structures are being tested. Having just emerged from the debilitating COVID-19 pandemic, we are now confronted with supply chain disruptions, soaring food and energy prices, and the specter of more geopolitical shocks. Granted, of course, that many of these factors are out of our control, hence the importance of seizing this opportunity to fix, repurpose, realign our SOEs to deliver on our developmental and economic agenda. Therefore, reform of our SOEs, and indeed of our broader society and economy, is an absolute imperative. The NDP suggests that the significant SOEs need a clear public interest mandate and straightforward governance structures, enabling them to balance and reconcile the economic and social objectives. For the large SOEs, it says, that are involved in economic infrastructure provision, their mandate should include the imperative of financial viability and sustaining their asset base and balance sheet to maintain and expand services. Secondly, state capture and corruption have played a significant role in hollowing out and preventing our SOEs from playing their developmental role. The Zondo Commission's observations and recommendations have outlined the devastating impact of state capture and corruption. We now know that SOEs' finances and balance sheets, operations, governance, culture, and skills base have been seriously compromised and require reform. Furthermore, SOEs aim to deliver economic and social development, leading to social justice for all. South Africa is a middle-income country, and it finds itself in a middle-income trap, where it cannot transit to higher levels of economic development unless we do things differently. The SOEs must play a crucial role in helping South Africa to move to a higher level of development. We need SOEs to drive skills development and introduce the adoption of new technologies to optimize and streamline business processes as part of the fourth industrial revolution. So what is then the strategy for SOE reform? SOEs, being as central as they are to advancing the national objectives through providing economic and social infrastructure. The SOE reform process is not unique in the world. Many countries are undertaking similar processes. For example, in Malaysia, reforms to make SOEs more efficient, fit for purpose, and develop new systems of accountability in order to grow their economies has been part of their objective. They established their outfit called Khazana some 10 to 12 years ago, starting with 5 SOEs. Today, over 100 SOEs fall under the banner of Khazana. The president announced, on the basis of this kind of evidence, the creation of the Presidential State-Owned Enterprise Council, PSEC as we call it, in June 2020 in the midst of the COVID pandemic, to provide independent guidance and views on the dependence of SOEs, or based on the fact that the dependence of SOEs on the fiscus was no longer sustainable. The SOEs are key implementing agents of the developmental state and thus must be marshaled accordingly. There was also evidence that international best practice on the governance of SOCs or SOEs showed the importance of separating the policy function from operational and regulatory functions. Leveraging the collective balance sheets of SOEs was the lesson that was learned from elsewhere in the world. The global experience shows that the maturation of a new entity, such as one that we envisage for South Africa, takes many years. In China, for example, it took over 20 years to develop to the point where they have SASAC today. Temasek in Singapore is the product of 30 years of work by that nation to safeguard the wealth of that nation, but also lay the basis for future generations as well. Of course, strengthening the framework governing the SOEs was a critical objective, protecting them from criminality, selfish interest, and sabotage, and finding innovative ways to manage the risk of future corruption and political and business capture was equally important. Accordingly, the following measures were proposed by PSEC arising from its work: an appropriate centralized shareholder ownership model that has been developed further, introduction of an overarching act or legislation governing SOEs, we have a draft ready, improved governance, financial control, risk management, and the infusion of requisite skills in the boards, both of the central entity and each SOE itself. That's work in progress. Having undertaken a financial analysis of over 30 other SOEs, it has made proposals which need further business analysis through experts to determine which of these should be merged and which should be considered for closing down. A deep financial analysis of Eskom was also undertaken. So what we have, honorable members, is a policy statement that clearly sets out what is the objective of this exercise, a business case for a state-owned holding company, a shareholder bill that reflects the aspirations of government and many proposals made to government itself, and to ensure a seamless transition to a state-owned holding company, we have sought in the last 4 years to inculcate a sense of urgency in the boards. We have demanded continuous review of current business models and development of financial stability plans to make SOEs financially self-reliant. Of course, in the process, we have to overcome the legacy of state capture and to improve operational effectiveness. Although it is now common knowledge, it's important to remind ourselves of the damage caused, as I referred to earlier on, by state capture, and the tough challenge in overcoming the damage inflicted on systems, plant, processes, governance, and of course, people. While much has been done to restore core operations and bring many corrupt companies and individuals to book, the deleterious effects of patronage, middlemen or middlewomen, and thieves highlights the depraved nature of those who have been entrusted with the safeguarding of the public interest and have abused it. Similarly, in the post-Zondo Commission period, we have engaged with, or the entities have engaged with many original equipment manufacturers, and particularly those that impact upon Transnet as well in recent times. Our approach to OEMs is to own up to unlawful payments made, to cooperate in addressing the wrongs of the past, to ensure that we address the irregularities, regularize the businesses of the OEMs, and ensure that the court plays its rightful role in this particular regard. No immunity from prosecution can be guaranteed, and where applicable, equipment is essential to restore full and proper operations in SOEs that is due from these OEMs. 3 weeks ago, I led a delegation comprised of Eskom and Transnet executives to explore ways to unlock some of the solutions needed by these two critical SOEs. This is still work in progress, and given the complexity of what is being dealt with, it will take a bit of time to conclude the negotiations that have commenced or recommenced. But certainly we will read, I believe, an optimistic end. Let me go through 3 areas very quickly: Eskom, Transnet, and SAA. Firstly, as far as Eskom is concerned, we now know that we have to, as a population and as the economy, settle for load shedding of a significant order until the end of the year at least. However, nonetheless, determined efforts are being made by government to ensure that the recovery of the generation capacity of Eskom must be complemented by the introduction of new capacity to end load shedding. The generation recovery plan to increase energy availability factor to 70% by the 31st of March, 2025 still remains in place. The debt relief provided by National Treasury of 254 billion rands over the next 3 years has been extremely helpful, financially speaking, and operationalization of the National Transmission Company of South Africa by November 2023 will take place. The board is expected to be announced shortly. The distribution subsidiary will be corporatized by the end of December 2023, and the process of identifying and appointing a group CEO is already underway, and within the next month or so, there should be some announcements in this regard, but this is a matter in the hands of the board at the moment. Some of the strategic initiatives we can expect from Eskom are expansion and strengthening of the grid as per the transmission development plan, to allow new generation capacity in the form of IPPs, gas, batteries, and other renewables to be developed. The Kuba life extension plan is underway, and replacements are due by the 31st of March 2024 of both Unit 1 and Unit 2. The Kusile units, as Minister Ramakopa reported yesterday, we hope will be in operation by the end of the year. The completion of the new build program of the remaining units at Kusile and Medupi will be on schedule, we hope as well. NERSA will issue a license to ensure that we can both trade in, but also import and export electricity as far as ESCOM is concerned. The due diligence for the establishment of a generation company and a new holding company will be completed by the 31st of March 2023. So ESCOM will no longer be the old ESCOM as we know it by the time we get to the end of this financial year. As far as Transnet is concerned, their immediate aim is to get more locomotives into service, repair the existing trains, locomotives, and other infrastructure so that speed restrictions are removed, tackle cable theft and vandalism, and law enforcement needs to do a lot more in this particular regard. And of course, digitize the operations of ESCOM and introduce new technologies that will remove the hand of the individual in many instances and avoid some of the problems that Transnet faces at the moment. The strategic initiatives are interesting and far-reaching in Transnet. The finalization of the roadmap for the future of Transnet should be completed in the next 3 months. Preparation for rail reform, particularly the establishment of the infrastructure manager within Transnet Freight Rail, will be done by October 2023, and the relaunch of slot sales by the 1st of April in the first instance of this year, and the second instance in a month or two from now. Optimization of the implementation of private partnerships, both in rail and ports, the overhaul of the freight rail infrastructure to recapture freight volumes is part of the objectives that Transnet is working towards. SAA today should be dead. Its assets should have been sold, and it should have been in liquidation. It wasn't. Through the determined effort of government, SAA has been saved, it has been restructured, hundreds of people have retained their jobs, and as we sit today, as of the end of March 2023, SAA operates 12 destinations, 10 of which are regional and 2 are domestic. It currently has a total of 12 planes. It's stabilized its operations, and it has turned a small profit in the previous financial year as well. Although it is not unable to generate funds that will ensure its sustainability into the future. As part of its strategic initiatives, the first round of hearings or the Competition Commission process has been concluded. The second round before the Competition Tribunal will commence shortly, and it is intended that by March 2024, SAA will operate 20 destinations, 1 intercontinental, 16 regional, and 3 local. Additional routes for revenue generation that are planned include Lubumbashi, Gaborone, Maputo, Accra and Abidjan, Lagos and Abuja, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo to connect the South American continent with us. So if we look at the investment picture of all of these SOEs, which is quite an important part of the role of SOEs as well, we are forecasting that over the next 5 years, the SOEs that we mentioned will spend more than 200 billion rand on expanding and improving infrastructure. ESCOM alone will spend 290 billion rands over the next 5 years, 152 billion rands in optimizing generation, and 74 billion rands to strengthen transmission. Transnet plans to spend 122 billion rands over the next 5 years, The investment is targeted mainly at rail with 84 or 85 billion rands, and the Port Authority will also see a significant 13 billion rands being spent to upgrade our ports as well. Capital will be directed mainly towards restoring the rail and port asset base of Transnet and the utilization to deliver on revenue commitments in the key commodities. Transparency and frankness with the public demands that notwithstanding the good work that has happened, there are shortcomings that we need to own up to. The illiteracy insecurity that we experience at the moment, some of the operational difficulties on the rail sector. There's more work to be done as far as red tape is concerned, both in the logistics area and in respect of the energy area. And implementation of our plans just takes too long. Renewables elsewhere in the world take a much shorter time to implement than in South Africa. And we have the opportunity to shorten much of the red tape that is required and the processes required if we have the political will and the administrative will to actually do so. Similarly, had IRP 19 been commenced 2 years ago, we would be in a better position today than we are currently at this point in time. Clearly, a new, if you like, vaccine of urgency needs to be inserted into our systems to ensure that red tape is reduced and many of the problems that we are faced with overcome over a period of time. Similarly, our commitment to the just energy transition remains in place, and both the just part and the energy transition part have detailed plans that Eskom has developed. A special top flight manager has been implemented for this project or hired for this project. And excuse me, the implementation of some of the recommendations will commence shortly as well. The freight system, of course, is a critical component of economic competitiveness, and we will see lots of progress in this particular regard, both in the short term and in the long term as well. Critical to many of the successes, both in the transmission area and in the area of logistics, is going to be the type of creative partnerships that we can develop with the private sector. And the plans to introduce partners in the Durban Container Terminal, Pier 2, and Ngqura container terminals have registered good progress, and a decision on Pier 2 is about to be made. The acquisition of a strategic equity partner for the Durban Container Terminal is also well on its way. So similar projects are being undertaken at this point in time to ensure that this good work actually carries on. So in conclusion, Chairperson, as far as the budget of the department is concerned, expenditure for the department is expected to increase at an average annual rate of 2.9%, from 303 million to 330 million. The department's main cost driver is compensation of employees, and to ensure that the department remains within the expenditure ceiling for the compensation of employees over the MTF period, only critical vacant posts will be filled. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.